Something that often gets overlooked in jazz education is the concept of melodic development. Somewhere in the process of learning about jazz theory like enclosures and bebop scales and pentatonics, it seems like many forget this important universal musical concept. And it shows many improvisers are technically sound, but their improvisations sound a bit too much like lick after unrelated lick, without much melodic concern for where we start or where we're going. Today I'd like to discuss melodic development, what it is, why we should use it, and how we can practice it. One of my favorite expressions about musical improvisation is that it is, at its best, instantaneous composition. So with that in mind, how do great composers consider melodic development? To discuss this idea, let's start with a familiar theme. It begins with the same note played 3 times, followed by another a third below. With this short 4-note theme, one might jump to the conclusion that it would lead to a boring or repetitive work. But with it, Beethoven created one of the most famous symphonic works in history, and because of the simplicity of and devotion to this theme, it has incredible melodic and structural integrity. So how did Beethoven accomplish this? And what could we jazz improvisers learn from him? Great composers like Beethoven, Duke Ellington, and Bob Brookmeyer influenced their themes with many compositional techniques to melodically and rhythmically transform them. And some great improvisers, like Sonny Rollins and Wayne Shorter, are known for their ability to take simple themes and transform them in much the same way. My favorite example of melodic development in an improvised jazz solo may be Sonny Rollins' solo on Without a Song, where he masterfully manipulates a repeated E-flat theme for large stretches of his improvisation. If you haven't heard that recording, I suggest you do so just so you can see how powerful this concept can be. But them aside, even great improvisers known more for their virtuosity, like Michael Brecker or Freddie Hubbard, make considerations for melodic development in many of their solos. With all that said, let's take a quick musical look at what some of these techniques of melodic development are and what they sound like, continuing to use the theme of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony as a musical template for these techniques. 3, 4. Something I want to point out is that with these techniques, we can rationalize playing just about anything. Through step-by-step manipulation of a theme, we can go from one theme to something completely different, but because everything is built on one idea, we create a line of connectivity through our improvisation. Listeners hear the melodic relationships and they appreciate having something that their ears can latch onto. Before we move on with practicing these techniques, I want to let you know that all of the materials you have seen and the practice materials to follow are available for purchase on my website, link in the description below. You'll also see materials from my previous videos, as well as an inquiry form for private lessons if you are interested in studying jazz theory, improvisation, or trumpet. Finally, I made simple backing tracks for practice purposes, which are available at the end of this video. Thanks. Before we can begin practicing these techniques, first we need to create a short theme. I would suggest no more than 5 notes. Consider the intervals of your theme. Does it have a harmonic contour? Are there repeated notes? Is it purely diatonic, or does it have some chromatic tones? If it does have chromatic tones, what kind of chromatic tones are there? If you enjoy the sound of certain intervals, I suggest you try to include them in your theme. These elements of your theme are your chance to shape your personal sound. I have a theme here that I like particularly. It looks a lot like a major 7th arpeggio upwards starting on the 7th, but I'm thinking of the starting note as a lower chromatic neighbor tone. This will be important soon as we start manipulating the theme. Now get to know your theme. I would suggest by starting with sequencing. Remember, you can sequence both diatonically, making all of the notes of your sequence fit in one key using diatonic intervals, or chromatically, keeping the intervals exactly the same throughout and transposing to every chromatic tone. We can pair different variations of our theme with the same sequencing technique. Here, I'm taking the inversion of our theme and pairing that with diatonic sequencing. Once you have a solid handle on your theme, try to use it manipulating the notes to fit within the changes to a jazz standard. Here is an example of one chorus over "It Could Happen to You" using variations on this theme. Here we have another 4-note theme. You'll notice again that we have a chromatic tone, but this time that chromatic tone is a lower neighboring tone from our first note. Again, we're going to sequence this theme, but this time I've paired our diatonic sequence with rhythmic augmentation and diminution. For some added fun, you'll notice that when we're playing this theme in triplets, it forms an interesting 4/3 pattern, which leads to some over the bar line playing. Here's an example of what this theme might sound like in improvisation over "I'll Remember April." 3, 4. Here is one more theme for us to develop. I've chosen this time to chromatically sequence this one in a few different ways. First in half steps as before, but then also in major seconds, and finally in minor thirds. Practicing our sequences in this way can help us to see different kinds of melodic connections that we might not have seen before. One of the most powerful ways we can use melodic development is by contrasting it with other methods of play. One of my favorite moments in a great motivic solo is when the soloist lets loose after using thematic play for some time. By contrasting a melodically developed style with more regular playing concepts like bebop language, we can create a compelling solo with a deep melodic well. Here's an example using this theme, but contrasting it with more bebop-style vocabulary over the changes to Benny Golson's stablemates. 4. As we practice these concepts of motivic development, your ear will begin to naturally organize melodies in a deeper way, and you'll find yourself more naturally able to develop your own melodies. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it explain some things about how we can use motivic development in our improvising. PDFs of all of my videos materials are available on my website, where you'll also find an inquiry form for private lessons. Also, if there's anything you'd like to learn about or have questions about when it comes to jazz improvisation, composition, or trumpet, please let me know in the comments. I'll either answer your question or might make it a topic for a future video. The rest of this video is all of the play-alongs that I've been using throughout the video. Thanks, and happy practicing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.